Hi everyone, this is Nick from Whole Latte Love, and today I'm going to be showing you how to brew some espresso on the ECM Casa V. But that's not all. We'll also be taking a look at frothing with this machine, making a drink like a latte or a cappuccino, and then also how you can dispense hot water with the wand. As you can see too, I've got a couple of ECM's great accessories along with me today that I'll be covering and going over how those can improve your brewing experience. So, let's get into it. Brewing on the Casa V is a straightforward affair. We're simply going to grind and tamp some espresso and then pull our shot. But there's a bit more to it than that if you want to do it the right way. And by that I mean pull shots that taste and look great and have a process that you can repeat consistently. So these two accessories that I've just put in front of the machine, this is the tamper and the coffee scoop that come with the Casa V. Could you use them to brew espresso? Sure. Do I recommend that you do? No, I don't. Now, let's start with our tamper here. So the tamper is actually the tool that we'll use, and I'll show you, to compact a puck of coffee into our portafilter. You simply go ahead and press that down in there. It makes a nice puck that resists the incoming water. So the problem with this tamper is that it's simply too lightweight. It has play inside our basket, and it's not going to help us get that nice uniform tamp. So I'm going to go ahead and put that off to the side. Now, fortunately, ECM has come up with a couple of great options for tamping in general. The first is just a standard tamper. Now, this has the same nice Bakelite plastic that you find on ECM's buttons on their portafilter handle, and a very elegant polished steel base. It's flat, and it goes straight down in there. And so that's good for just a nice even tamp. Now, let's say though that we want to make it a little bit more stable. ECM does have a portafilter holder here, so all you would do there is, with the neck of the portafilter, fit that right into that slot. It's not hands-free. A lot of people ask. The weight of the handle is going to tip that, so you simply hold and tamp. And now, something that's become even more popular these days is leveling. So like polishing off our surface here and then tamping. And ECM does have some accessories for that with their leveler kind of distributor tool here. And then they have what's called a push tamp. This is what I'll be using when we brew today. But so basically what you would do with this is this blade, you put that in, we'll give it a spin, and that polishes off our surface. And then the difference between our push tamp here and a standard tamp is that I can actually set the depth of this tamping surface so it goes far enough down. And because there's a ridge here, if you push all the way down, what's going to happen is eventually this ridge is going to come in contact with all edges of the basket so that you can't tamp unevenly. So this is something that's going to be really useful. Now, if you're using a machine like the ECM Casa V, I strongly recommend, emphatically so, that you get yourself a grinder to grind your coffee fresh. If you're not doing that, I would say that you are really limiting the potential of what this machine can do for you. So I've actually gone ahead and dialed in our grinder. This is the ECM S Automatic. It has programmable timing, which is great. And what I've done is I've actually used an Acaia scale here. This is the lunar. So I know that I'm going to get about 18 grams out when I do that time 1 dispensing. And so knowing the grammage of the coffee that you're brewing with is really important, because just like if you're baking or following any kind of recipe, if you use a consistent amount of ingredients, you can ensure that you're always using the same standard when you're brewing. And so getting the same amount of coffee in every time is going to be really useful. We're also going to use this scale to measure our output. Now, things like brew ratios, which are the ratio of dry coffee to liquid espresso, are covered in a video that AJ has done, and that's really good. We'll put a link up in the corner there for you to click on to take a look at that. So let's take a look at what my process will be with this machine though. I can fit the lunar under there when I'm ready, but let's go ahead first and just grind our coffee. Now for my setup, because I have all of ECM's tools, I'll go ahead and start with our distributor here. Simply place that down, give that a couple of spins, and as you can see, I have a nice polished surface. Now I'll take the push tamp, set that down, press, and we're ready to brew. If you're going to use a more traditional tamper, you can use your finger to brush the coffee across the basket. That just helps get a nice level surface. So we'll go ahead and lock in. And I'll get my arm out of your way there in just a second. and I've got an ECM, this is a glass espresso cup from them. We're doing that so that you can see, it may be just a touch too tall for this scale here, but I think we'll be good. I want you to see just how much volume we get with that crema. I'm using the Whole Latte Love Crema Wave today. So I like to time from first drip, meaning when we first get our coffee coming out, we'll tear this out. I'll push our brew button, and then I'll hit the timer once the coffee starts to flow. And we're going to aim for about 36 grams out in around 25 to 30 seconds. And there we go, that's about 36 in 25 seconds. We can see a really nice cascading crema layer on top of that shot too. So let's say though that it was a little too fast, meaning we got more liquid than we needed in that amount of time, or it was slow, where we needed to keep brewing to get to that amount that we wanted, that 36 grams. Mark has a video that he's done on proper dialing in of your grinder, that's refining your grind for your brewing, that we're gonna put in the link up in the corner there for you to click on, and that's going to take you to his overview on how to get your grinder dialed in. But that's how you would pull a shot using the ECM Casa V. We've got our shot, but let me show you how you can make, say, a full cup of coffee for a guest who may not be familiar or, who really likes espresso, for example. We'll make what's called an Americano for that. First, let's go ahead though. We'll get our cup here and we'll just slide the scale right out from underneath. I have a glass here, anything would do, but you have an American style coffee mug or something. We'll go right on ahead and pour our espresso in there. And we'll run some hot water through the steam arm. So this is an Americano, it's just hot water brewed into espresso. So go ahead and hit the pump switch. And you don't have to open it all the way, because if we open it just a bit more, we can really get that stream flowing. So if you just have it slightly open, you can get a more gentle stream so you're not splashing, and that can help preserve some of that crema on the top. It does get a bit foamy with the introduction of the water. But so, and again, anytime that you push this button and open this valve here, that's how you can dispense hot water. You can do that for teas, for cocos, for anything like that. And now our espresso has turned into an Americano. We've pulled our shot, and now we're ready to prep another one. There's a couple of steps that we'll want to take first, just to make sure that our portafilter is nice and clean for the next coffee that we grind into it. So we'll go ahead and simply remove the portafilter from the group. You can see we have our puck of espresso left over that we need to dispose of. There's an accessory, and I've got one right here. I'll bring it a bit closer to you. You can see the nice ECM logo. It's called a knock box, and what that's designed for is to simply knock your spent pucks of coffee out when you're done with brewing. So we'll simply line up our bar more or less right across the center, give it a nice knock, and the coffee will fall in. And so depending on how much water was left over will determine how much coffee, sometimes gets stuck in there. If it's even drier, you'll typically get the whole thing out. But the knock box is great because the alternative is that you'd have to maybe knock this against the garbage, which to me always kind of skeeves me out a bit. So one other thing that we can do though is simply run some water, and this will help get some of the coffee that may be on the group off as well. And having a towel handy, I'm going to bring that in from off screen, is always useful just to wipe up any drips, any coffee that's left over in our basket, and just get things nice and clean. And then if you really want to, you can take a look at your screen underneath, and mine is actually pretty clean, so I'm not going to deal with that. But if there's still some coffee grounds left over on that, you'll want to get those cleaned off too. So the knock box is just a great quality of life sort of accessory. It keeps you from having to knock things into the trash. It's just right there, and it even has a little bit of extra branding if you want to further accessorize your space. So that's how you'd knock out a spent coffee puck and get ready to brew again. Now that we've got the basics of espresso brewing under our belt, let's take a look at how we would froth milk. So one thing that I do want to say is that because the ECM Casa V is a single boiler dual use machine, it can either brew espresso or steam milk, but it can't do both at the same time. So as a matter of process, I'm going to recommend that you actually go ahead and brew your espresso first, and then you can froth milk and pour that in. So we'll go ahead and get another shot prepped. And this time I have a very cool looking, not neutral cappuccino cup that we'll be brewing and then pouring milk into. So get our shot ready to go. Now this one's going to be just for the camera, so I'm not going to wedge my scale under that cup, but I always recommend that you weigh your shots. Just don't have enough space under there. And we'll hit brew. Still am using my timer though, so I can get a sense. And that's something that you can do at home too. If you've got a measured glass, for instance, that measures to about 2 ounces or so, and you're timing, you can use that to get a general sense that your shots are pulling too fast or too slow. But having a scale that measures in grams is ultimately going to get you a more accurate result. And that looks good, so we'll go ahead and pull that. So what we're going to do now is switch the machine into steam mode by pressing our steam button here. The light has illuminated, letting us know that the boiler is heating up to steaming temperature. And I'll move my cup. So we're going to want to move fast, because it's only going to take about 2 minutes max for this machine to get into steaming mode. And we'll know because that light is going to turn back off. So I've got some whole milk here. And whole milk is typically just going to be the easiest to use, right? Because ultimately it has the most fat, which is what causes the milk to keep its shape basically when you're frothing, which can be important. Now, this is a 12-ounce frothing pitcher, and when you're making smaller drinks like this, it's good to have a pitcher that's about this size because we're going to need to position our wand, which is a nice commercial steam wand, into the pitcher to get a roll. And so this isn't necessarily going to be a milk frothing tutorial. If you want some real in-depth advice on how to get started, AJ did a terrific video that basically chronicles his whole process of learning how to froth milk. So I strongly recommend that you take a look at that. But what we want is, in this pitcher, which is 12 ounces, about a finger's width between the edge of this spout and the surface of my milk here. So this may even be just a little too much. Remember, you can always dump a little bit of milk back into the pitcher or into the sink if you think that you've got too much. Our crema is staying on here. And then one thing that I'll do, even before we're quite to steam temperature, is just open this valve. Because what we'll do is we'll bleed out any of the hot water, the water basically that had condensed inside this line, because there's always going to be a little bit of water just kind of condensing in there, and you want to purge that out so that you don't get that water basically into your milk. And so our light has turned off. So what I want to do is position the wand in such a way that we're going to hear a tearing sound in the milk. That's the sound of air being introduced. And then we want to get a vortex that's going to fold the milk over on top of itself to create that microfoam layer that we want. And so we've got that vortex, the milk is swirling, and as we lower the pitcher, meaning I'm lowering my hand that's holding it, we can continue to add more air. And that's just getting a little too hot to hold. We want to cut that around 140 degrees, and my nice assistant from off camera has given me a towel here, and what we want to do is cool the boiler back down. So we'll switch out of steam mode, we'll activate our pump, and we're going to run water until we get a solid stream, and that lets us know that we've evacuated our steam. We can give that a nice wipe down our drip tray as well. So let's take a look at the fruits of our labor here. We do have a nice foamy milk. This may be a little too airy, which means that probably want to inject just a little bit less foam. And you're going to see me put my latte art skills, we'll call them, on display. So hopefully we can kind of see what I'm doing here, but we're going to go ahead and pour our base layer underneath our crema. And, you know, not terrible, but we could probably do better with a bit more practice. And that's how you'd go ahead and froth milk and make a milk drink using the ECM Casa V.